Today, we are honored to have Dr. Bernard Roth, the Rodney H. Adams Professor of Engineering at Stanford University, as our commencement speaker.
Thank you, President O'Brien, and thank you, faculty and staff and students and guests, for having me here with you today. It's a nice occasion to be at graduations. I was telling him, I've been at Stanford a very long time. I came in 1962, and I tend to go to the graduation every year unless I'm on sabbatical. But I've never seen the students walk in because the faculty at Stanford walks in after the students. So it was really nice for first time in my life to see students walk into a graduation. At any rate, want to just give you some experiences that I've gained through the years that I think have been very, very useful to me. And I've shared them with a lot of students and a lot of people in talks and workshops. And so I view this as sort of my parting gift to you before you go out into the real world, which you already are in, I know, but even more so. So I came to Silicon Valley, as I said, in 1962, and it was a very, very different place than it is now. There was very little venture capital, and there were just one or two very big companies, and basically students and engineers who I dealt with a lot of them had this pipe dream. They were going to start a business. But they never did. And instead, they went to work for Hewlett-Packard or a company like Raychem, which doesn't exist anymore. And they just kept talking about it their whole lives while I was with them. And it reminded me of a play I had seen by O'Neill called The Iceman Cometh. And in that play, it takes place in a bar. And through the whole play, they never leave the bar, and they keep talking about leaving the bar. And that was the same idea I got from these people. And I just felt really bad about that. And then I also noticed students kept coming to me with problems in their lives and things like that. And again, no one seemed to do anything about it. So that bothered me. And even though I was totally incompetent to do any work in that area, I felt I ought to do something about it. So I started a course now it's called the Designer in Society, which I've been giving for 45 years, and I've just written a book about it. And it's just one of these things that's been a very satisfying thing to me, in that I invariably run into people from years and years ago who tell me that was the best thing they ever got out of their education, and it changed their lives, all that kind of stuff. So naturally, I feel great about that. And I tried to distill it down to a few principles so you don't have to sit through a whole course with me. So this is just, I'm trying to give you the essence, okay? And what I did when I started the class is I felt I had to give people the experience of doing something. If you read psychological literature, that's the way they deal with things like phobias and stuff like that. They just give you a little experience at a time, and eventually you get enough strength to carry on your own. So the idea was you had to do a project of your own choosing, and it could be one of two topics, and it didn't have to have anything to do with engineering. And one of the topics was do something you've always wanted to do in your life and never done, or get rid of a problem in your life. And basically, I would just have them make a contract with themselves so they'd know if they accomplished it or not. Other than that, I made them clear it was their own project. It wasn't my project. It wasn't for a grade. It wasn't anything. It was just for their own life. And it turned out to be a really successful thing in that people would do something. I had one woman, her mother was afraid of water, and she had 6 sisters, and none of them swam. And she was from Texas. She came to California. She wanted to learn how to swim. So her project was to learn how to swim. And she did, and fine. And I thought that was the end of the story. And the next year, I get an email from her, "Thank you, Bernie, I learned Italian." And 2 years later, I got an email from her, "Thank you, Bernie." She was actually a professor at Santa Clara. "I've changed my job, and I'm now working in biotech, and I love it, and I would have never done the courses if you hadn't given me the energy to do it." And I keep getting these things where people keep blaming me for stuff I have nothing to do with, really. really. And that was the point, really. And then on the other hand, there's a fellow, he actually still works at Stanford, so I see him, he's been in my life for 30 years. His project was he had a very troubled relationship with his father, and he wanted to clear it up. And he did during the 10 weeks of the class. And then unexpectedly, his father got a stroke and died 2 months later. And every time I see that student, I start to cry because it was just such a heart-rendering thing. And there have been many projects like that. So the point simply is in all of that, now we have what's called the D.school, so we've kind of put some slang around this stuff. And it comes down to the D.school equivalent of what we call a bias towards action. And the whole idea is not to just sit around and think about things. It's okay to have pipe dreams. We all have them. I have pipe dreams. There's nothing wrong with it. But to make sure that if it's something you want to do, just do it. Don't sit around and think about it. And I'll get back to that in a minute with you. So that's one of the things. And we apply that. For example, we have a class, someone's asking me if I teach business. We have a class at the D.school called Launchpad, where it takes 10 weeks. It's a 10-week class, and it's taught by two guys who are very tough. One was the inventor of the modern snowshoe, and the other was the head of eBay for the East Coast. So they've all done other business things too. And the rule is you have to tell them what business you want to be in. You have to have a partner. We do everything in teams. So they screen you. And if they let you into the class, you agree to follow their procedure. And the procedure is you have to launch the class after 5 weeks or before, or get out of the class. So that's the rule. And it's kind of funny, so I see many of you are from India. So there were two young men from India who had an idea. They wanted to make an app that was a news reading app. And they got into the class. And it coincided just when the iPad came out, just that. So we got them an iPad, and they had nowhere to sit, so they sat in the cafes. And one of the things we teach in our work is iteration, prototyping, do a lot of that, and be user-centered. Go to the people you're designing for. So they sat in the cafes, and they couldn't help it. Everyone wanted to try the iPad. So they kept letting people try the iPad, and they were really testing out their app for them. And so they got a lot of feedback, and after the 3rd week, the faculty said, launch. And they said, no, it's not perfect. It's got a lot of bugs in it. Launch or get out of the class. So they launched, and it just took off. The New York Times sued them for using their content. The San Jose Mercury News wanted to hire them. Steve Jobs gave them a shout out. They went to #1 on the charts, and the company was called Pulse. And then they sold it for $4 a copy in those days. And before we knew it, they had like $80,000. And Steve Jobs got his cut, but they had $80,000 of income. And it was like amazing. And now what's happened 2 years later, LinkedIn bought them for $90 million, and it's now called Pulse LinkedIn. You can get it for free. So it's an example. If they had taken that class in the business school, as great as the Stanford Business School is, they would still be getting the app perfect. So the whole idea is don't wait for perfection. You'll never be there. The whole idea is to do it and learn by doing. So in our world, failure is okay. People are afraid of failing. There's nothing wrong with failing. There's only wrong is not learning from failure. So if you do something and you fail, it's okay if you learn from it. You'll get there more quickly. I learned this lesson many years ago. I was on the board of directors of a company up in Berkeley. And I would invariably come late to the board meeting. Every time I'd come late to the board meeting. And I'd walk in those days it was called Highway 17. I'd walk in and I'd say, I'm really sorry, people, the traffic was terrible on Highway 17. And it was terrible, I wasn't lying about that. With no cell phones in those days. What I didn't tell them is, of course, I did 4 telephone calls I shouldn't have before I left my office. I had a teletype, I did some stuff. I met a colleague going to the elevator and transacted some important business. By the time I got to my car, if there was no traffic in Palo Alto, no traffic on Highway 17, or no traffic in Berkeley, I would have made it. But of course there was traffic, and of course I was late. When I got that realization, I said to myself, I should either get there on time or quit the job. Just resign from the board because I'm not respecting being there. And what I realized, I wasn't giving that enough valence in my life. And I changed. And I changed, and I stayed on the board, and I was always on time. And if I came, I left early. If I came early, I had some time to talk to some of the board members, which was useful. And it changed my whole life about lateness. I used to be the guy who was always late. Now I'm the pain in the backside who's never late. Okay, who tries to get people, when they look at me, they cringe if they're late in my presence, okay? And it's just a matter of changing your behavior. So what you have to do when you get a realization, when you're saying something like the traffic was heavy, say that, because you have to be reasonable. But what you should do in your head, you say, that's bullshit. And I'm never gonna do that again. And of course you'll do it again. But if you do that enough times, you will change. And I've changed a lot of my behavior and a lot of behavior of people around me. It's very simple. And just to make it clear to you, if you came in late to class and you had a flat on your bicycle, and you came in and you said, Dr. Bryan, I'm sorry I have a flat on my bicycle, I'm sorry I'm 5 minutes late. If the rule was you get kicked out of school to be late, you would be there whether you had a flat or not. You understand? So it's just a matter if you want to give the thing in your life enough importance. Nobody cares but you. But I'm just saying, if you ever want to change your behavior, you're never going to do it by using reasons. You have to just say what you did, say what you didn't do, and don't give a reason for it. And it works in your favor. I get, many of you are from abroad, I get 3 or 4 emails, and I just got one this morning. I get 3 or 4 emails a week from some student in India or in China or in Iran now, Pakistan, who wants to come to Stanford to do a PhD with me. Often these emails have a lot of work in them. They tell me a lot about their lives and all that. I could just ignore them. I don't know them. I don't know them anything. But something in me makes me feel a little bad just ignoring it. So I used to say, I'm sorry I can't take you because I don't have any money. I'm sorry I can't take you, I'm going on sabbatical. I give them a reason every time. And invariably they push back. If I don't have money, they have an uncle who's rich. If I'm going on sabbatical, they can wait a year or 2. And it would go on and on and on. Now all I do is I say, sorry, I can't help you, good luck. And what happens is, half the time I get back an email saying, thank you very much for answering my email, Professor. I'm just saying what it is. I'm not giving any of the reasons, because I don't know the reasons myself. They're so complicated if I decide to take someone or not someone. And there are tests. People have put people into MRI machines, and they test them where they have to push a button. And the part of the brain which fires pushing the button fires before the part of the brain that makes up the reason for pushing the button, for the choice. So in fact, most of us act impulsively by instinct. Most of our actions are instinctual. They're not thought out with the frontal cortex. But we have to pretend we're reasonable people, so we made up that we thought it out. We didn't. You did it because you did it, or you didn't do it because you didn't do it. If you use that, your life will be much better, you'll change it. So that's one. You got that? That's going to be on the exam. Okay? All right, okay. 2, there's a big difference between trying and doing. Now, whenever I say that, I'm afraid I'm going to be struck down by the guards, because if you saw the Star Wars movie, Yoda says there's no such thing as try, just do, okay? But he's wrong. It's okay in the movie, but he's wrong in life, okay? In life, there is such a thing as trying, and there is such a thing as doing. The only problem is when you confuse them. And it's important to know which state you're in. Are you in a trying state, or are you in a doing state? And they're 2 different things. I'll give you a beautiful example that happened in my life. I can tell it to you because my wife's not here. She hates when I give this example, but it's in my book. It's too late. The world will know about it. We were driving, my son lives in San Francisco in the Mission District, and we were driving home from his house. And there's a movie theater called the Roxy in the Mission District, and it shows movies you won't see anywhere else. And it's a kind of crummy theater, but the movies are usually very interesting. And I saw the biggest line I ever saw in my life in front of the Roxy as we drove by it. And then I looked at the marquee. I saw it's a movie about a band, and the band is going to be there. I figure, I had never heard of them, but it looks interesting. So I say to my wife, let's go. And she says, no, I'm tired. Let's go home. Let's go drive back down. Please, let's go. Okay. So I say, okay, you jump out, buy 2 tickets. I'll go find a parking place. So I come back 10 minutes later, and she's not in line. She's just standing near the box office. I said, well, how come you're not in line? She said, I couldn't get any tickets. I said, why not? She said, they're sold out. I said, why didn't you get tickets? They're sold out. just stay here for a few minutes. I went down, and then I came back with 2 tickets. Okay? Now, what happened is my wife was trying. She was being nice to me. She was trying to go to the theater. I was going to get into the theater no matter what it took. And it didn't take very much. You know, I just found some people online whose friends weren't coming, and they sold me the tickets. But I would have paid more money than I did even to get in. So the point is, I was willing to do it. You understand? And that's the point. And I wasn't stopped by an obstacle. So when you when you're doing things, often you get obstacles. Those obstacles are usually a big blessing, although you don't realize it at the time. So it's like you're banging into an obstacle, like I'm banging into the podium. But if I want to get the thing done, I have to walk around the obstacle. I have to walk around the podium. And in my case, walking around the podium was not dealing with the box office, but going where the tickets were in the people's hands. Okay? So the point simply is, it's okay to try, and you can have a lot of fun trying. I'm in a men's cooking club. We try and cook all the time. But we have a lot of fun. But we're not going to become great chefs, okay? But if you're really doing something, then you have to have it done. I have a friend. He was just at Stanford when I came many years ago, and he's a serial inventor, an entrepreneur, and very successful. And he lives in Oregon. I invited him to give a talk at Stanford. And his story is this. When he was a Stanford student, he had an accident in the shower. He was a swimmer. And he needed a back surgery. And the Olympics were coming. And he was going to try out the Olympics. And the doctor told him, there's no way you're going to make the Olympics. No way you should never even swim again. And he spoke to some people who encouraged him to go for it. And he got trained in the reservoir. He qualified the last minute to go to the Olympics. He just made it. It was between him and one other person. He got to the Olympics. He won the gold medal and set the world's record. He came back and put the medal on the doctor's desk. And he told me, he said, you know, Bernie, everything I've ever done that's been great, it's because I was blocked, just like when I got my accident. I probably would never have gotten that medal if I hadn't had that accident. And everything I've ever found that was great was I got frustrated, and I got blocked, and I had to find a way around it, and it led to something wonderful, whereas I was just going to do something prosaic even if it worked. So lesson 2, there's a big difference between trying and doing. Okay, you got that? Good, thank you. The third lesson is the following. If you're stuck, if you're losing sleep over something, if it's really something you want to, and I'm talking about really petty stuff. I'm not talking about peace in the world forever. I'm not talking about India and Pakistan or anything global like that. I'm talking about what you should do tomorrow, what job you should take, should you call your mother, should you tell your friend you don't want to go to movies with him, that kind of stuff. If you're losing sleep over that, 99.2.5678% of the time, it's because you're dealing with the wrong problem. And you have to reframe the problem. So if you're stuck, the way around it is not to keep banging your head against the podium, but to walk around it. And the way you walk around it is you reframe the problem. And it's very easy to do. It's very easy to reframe the problem. So if you're losing sleep over something, the method that I use, which is very effective, is just say to yourself, what would it do for me if I solved the problem? And take that thing and make that the new problem. I'll give you an example in a minute. So I'll repeat it, and then because I'm going to put this on the exam, so listen. What if you're losing sleep over something, and you tell yourself what the problem you're losing sleep over, and then ask yourself what it would do for you if you solve that problem, and make that the new problem. And when you do that, the solution space opens up tremendously, and often the problem solves itself. So let me give you an example of that. I gave a talk in front of Google, to Google workers there, and in front of 200 people, this woman, I gave them the problem. I said, what's your problem? She raised her hand, and I don't know how she had the courage to do this, but she said, my problem is to find a good man. So maybe there was someone in the audience she was interested in, I don't know. But she said her problem was to find a good man. So I asked her, what would it do for you if you found a good man? And she said, I'd have companionship. Okay? So if her real problem is, assuming this is all true, I mean, it's true that's happened. I don't know what really is going on in her head. But if that's true, if she really was looking for companionship, a good man would be the wrong answer. I'm a good man, but I'm not giving my wife any companionship right now. I'm here with you. I'm running around giving talks and teaching. I'm a really good man. Believe me, you don't know how good I am. Right? I'm upgrading the gender, really. All my male friends hate me. I'm so good. Okay, but the point simply is I'm not good in that way. I'm not really satisfying my wife's need for companionship. So if you wanted companionship, she would be better off, this woman at Google, maybe getting a dog or a cat or joining a club or going on a hike with people or going to jail or joining the army. The solution space is vast, including the good man. But the fact that you're losing sleep over it, a lot of people know how to find a man or a woman. It's not a hard thing in this life, okay? And people from India, your parents help you, so it's very easy, right? It's really easy, okay? So so the point simply is, even if she found a good man, it would not give her companionship probably. So even if you solved it, and the fact that you can't solve it means it's not working right. So it's just a matter of letting go of the problem, and then the problem disappears and you have really a good problem to work on. So those are the three things now. They are what? Let's review. What's number one? Say again? Okay, good. What's number two? Good. What's number three? All right, so you'll be able to give them the degrees, okay? Okay, so, but it's kind of interesting. So, you know, people like me were supposed to get up here and give you advice, right? That's what we're supposed to do. I've given you a tool. I haven't given you advice. And you get to use the tool or not use the tool. I have a colleague. I do a workshop like this every year. We do an executive education for people from industry. And I have a colleague who's a really close friend and a very smart professor. He sits in the back of the room every year when I do this. And he comes up to me every year. He says, "That exercise, Bernie, is amazing. Every year it solves my problems." And I say to him, "I don't understand." You said, "What do you need me for? It's such a simple exercise. What do you need me to do it?" And that's the point. Even if you think it's brilliant, if you don't do it, it's not going to help you. You understand this stuff? So the stuff, it has to be applied in your life. You're going to forget about my speech. Believe me, people have forgotten about much better speeches, okay? But if you use it, you won't forget about it. So please use it in your life. Do not use reasons unless you have to. Do not give a reason unless you have to give it. Just say what you've done and not done, okay? Make sure if you're trying to do something, it's okay if it happens, okay if it doesn't happen. But if you're doing something, don't be blocked by an obstacle. Make that obstacle an opportunity and walk around it and get it done, no matter what it takes. Don't kill anybody, but within moral boundaries, get it done. Okay, and some people you get like Clint Eastwood, you know, they wouldn't let him do something in Carmel, so he became mayor and changed the rules. So some people have this idea they have power in the world and they can handle the world, whatever comes up. Okay, that's an extreme example, but you get the idea. Okay, and the last thing is don't sit around being stuck, losing sleep all the time. Most of the time, it's as simple as reframing the problem, and it'll solve itself, really. It will solve itself. I've had it so many times in my life, and people do it. But you have to do it. Don't be like my colleague Mark, he enjoys it, and he does it once a year and suffers the rest of the time. Okay, so basically, I should end by giving you some good advice, okay? And I thought about it, and since my book came out, I've gotten a lot of emails from people who haven't been in my life for years and years and years. And the one that I'm going to tell you about, and I'll end with that, I got an email from this fellow, and he was a first-generation student. No one in his family had ever gone to college before. And he came in, and I was affiliated with a dormitory, and he was very, you know, he felt inferior. He felt everyone was smarter than him. He had a lot of fears and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of helped him a little bit and all. And then he graduated and he became a professional, very successful. And his daughter came to Stanford, and she inherited the fears of the father, and I worked with her a little bit. So he sends me an email, and he says, "Bernie, I'll never forget what you did for me and my daughter, and I'll never forget the piece of advice you gave me, because it got me go through my whole life. And I don't remember what I told him. And I can't wait to see the end of the email." And I look, and the piece of advice is, take it easy, it'll be okay. So that's the advice for you, my friends. Take it easy, it'll all be okay, all right? Thank you very much.